What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. So, of course, we're going to start this off by greeting a special guest for the day. It's the first time he's been on the show, first time he's been on the channel, and I think it's our first time working together, despite a few online interactions. But without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce the man at MMA Fighting. He is the Associate News Editor, Mr. Alexander K. Lee. Alexander, Mr. Lee, how are you doing today?
What an honor, guys. What an honor to be here with you, Ant and Jay and Ben. I cannot wait for this 3-hour Ultimate Fighter draft podcast. When you guys suggested that we talk about like the Ultimate Fighter for like 3 hours, I was like, I don't know if people are going to be into that, but I don't say no to anything. So, man, people buckle up. Nothing but Ultimate Fighter talk. The past, present, the future, the next, 20 seasons that I'm sure we're going to get. I am excited. I'm jazzed up.
Well, Alex, I hate to break it to you, but that's next week. This week, we're doing a deep dive into Bellator post-limbs. So that is the subject. So I hope you have your notes ready, and we're going to deep dive on that topic. Now, let's go ahead and introduce the jack of all trades who's mastered them all. He is one of the editors at Sherdog.com. He is the homeboy, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
I feel very seen here because Alex is, of course, referring to my ongoing series of columns in which I am taking each season of The Ultimate Fighter from 1 through, I'll probably go through the first 20 seasons or so, and I am reselecting the fighters in order of how well they really did. As seen as I feel, I'm just happy that there are 2 or 3 people out there that actually read the column, so I will take it all.
All right, and it's great. The panel is anchored every week by the man with the numbers, the stats, the facts, and the figures. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on, my brother?
I'm really looking forward to this show. I'm really excited to dive into the nitty gritty of what went into Tough 10, because I have very fond memories of an old roommate and I who would actually watch he was not an MMA fan, and we went through and watched the entire season together. And it was as glorious as you might think it would be. So shout out to JD. My stat of the week, though, is not involving Tough. I know it's kind of a killer. But my stat of the week is 100. We did it, guys. 100. So back at the fight card this past weekend, Wellington Turman, who fought Andrew Sanchez and, got a 3-piece and soda, he walked out to Phenomenal by Eminem. And he lost. The loss is the 100th recorded loss that we have for Eminem in UFC history, which is far and above any other artist ever. So Wellington Turman, 100. Shout out to Eminem, I guess.
How do these people not learn their lesson?
Yeah, it's like, why are we still having this conversation? Didn't we establish the Eminem curse was a very real thing years ago?
It's how I got started doing this thing. Not even kidding. Back in 2012, yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, they should have been paying attention, but hopefully you guys were paying attention on Saturday night. The main event, Derrick Lewis versus Alexei Oleinik, was what it was. It was exactly what we thought a Lewis versus Oleinik fight could end up being. Now that Lewis has topped the heavyweight division statistically as far as the most knockout wins in history, and he's got a win over a pretty well-proven veteran, where do we go next with this guy?
I'll jump in. Yeah. One, the lesson we learn is walk out to Fat Pat.
That was banging.
That was a dope-ass walkout song. Yeah. That's how you
like that, and that's how you show you don't just like Houston hip hop. You are a Houston guy. But anyway, what you do is you make him make him fight Curtis Blaydes and wait for Ngannou to finish his business.
I think the Blaydes matchup is right there. Blaydes called him out right after. He was ready. He had that tweet in the drafts. He was ready for that call out. Yeah. It's one of those matchups that I'm almost like I'm surprised they hadn't fought already. So I'm like, yeah, of course, make it happen. Yeah, very logical.
Surprised and glad they haven't fought already because so many of the people up there have. And while Blaydes is a tricky, sticky style matchup for him, there's always the chance it looks like Ngannou versus Blaydes. I mean, if it's possible to put Blaydes down just by hitting him once really hard behind the ear, as Ngannou's shown, Lewis is a guy who can do that. I don't favor him to. But I want to see it.
Speaking of want to see, I'm going to throw another one out there because Blaydes is the obvious one. The division is kind of tied up at the moment, and Ngannou is waiting in the wings, so Blaydes is stuck there. So that makes kind of sense to have that other eliminator fight. But here's the other one, another fight that has surprisingly never happened, and I made sure just to make sure again that it's never happened. And you know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Alistair Overeem. I think that would be a huge, delightful mess. I want to see if Lewis can take the body shots, take the knees to the gut, keep going. He's not going to have to worry about much takedown defense, and they're going to slug it out and hit each other really hard. Because other than that, it's rematch city. Other than, you know, Stipe and DC. I mean, Ngannou, let's definitely run that one back. JDS, you know, Volkov. There's names. You're like, boy, I don't know if I want to see those again. But then Overeem, I'm going to say Overeem because the Blaydes one, we're going to get it. But I want to get a little weird. So, yeah, I'm going with that.
Yeah, Overeem does. I think he is fighting Augusto Sakai on September 5th. But one, I think I would.
That fight doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, and I would pick Overeem to win that fight. And even if he doesn't, even if Overeem loses, you still kind of feel like the Lewis matchup is the right one to make. Right? Yeah. They have to fight. Like it would be a shame if those two guys in the UFC and they never fight. Like it's a good style matchup. The personality clash would be interesting as well. Yeah, that was a big pick for me as well. I thought the winner of that fight, but preferably Overeem and not Sakai.
I want to ask you guys something real quick to throw us off schedule for a second. Lewis, is he going to drop the weight? Because Lewis, in his post-fight interview, he said he's not going to fight again unless he drops 15 to 20 pounds. Is this just part of his bit?
He looked good, even though he came into 65. He looked all right. He looked really good.
I think he'll do it, and maybe not necessarily drop the weight, but just have better overall body composition. That probably should be his overall fitness goal there. But I don't see him stepping in the cage without some more of a body transformation. He's done an exceptional job as of late, like really tailoring his lifestyle. I know he said he's still eating whatever he wants, but if he's still eating whatever he wants and he's training to perform the way he has lately, I mean, if he has the semblance of a nutritionist sniffing anywhere near him, we're going to see leaps and bounds of changes in him. And I want to second you guys about the Overeem matchup. While Blaydes makes more sense as far as rankings are concerned, that would be the matchup to go to if you're really gunning for a title shot. But Derrick Lewis, man, we want to see the fun, we want to see the weird, we want to see the marquee names more so than anything else. And Overeem fits the bill, I think, more so than Curtis Blaydes. It exaggerates the weaknesses in both men to where you just might have something very, very, very strange take place. So that is the matchup that I have to go ahead and throw my hand up in support of. But yeah, man, I think Derrick Lewis with even slimmer, man, you're going to see better cardio. We're going to see better decision making too. I think we attribute a lot of bad decisions in a fight to poor fight IQ as opposed to poor cardio. If you feel like you have the gas tank to do certain things, you're mentally just going to be sharper. You're just going to be faster to pull the trigger. So imagine Derrick Lewis further down that road, and that is a very scary man who's starting off fights with jumping switch kicks. Like that's absolutely nuts. So, so any other thoughts on Derrick Lewis and what his future at heavyweight holds before we move it on along here?
I think, like you said, it just weird, fun fights from now on. You know, like I said, I said it's possible he fights the winner of Overeem and Sakai, but it's kind of strange. Like Sakai just doesn't fit that bill. It's like you don't want to see him fight the Sakais. You wouldn't want to see him fight like Marcin Tybura again. Like, and these are good fighters, right? It's just it doesn't fit this kind of weird Lewis is in his career. It's all gravy for him now. You know, he got that one title shot. And well earned. You know, I remember there was some people saying he was like a lame duck challenger, but I think he had won what, like six or seven. Yeah, about 8. He was on a run, right? And knocking people out and beating good competition. And the Ngannou fight was a terrible fight to get a title shot off of, obviously, but still he beat the #1 contender, right? He beat him. So everything's gravy. He can say I made it to the top 3 heavyweight, top 5 heavyweight for, you know, X amount of months, years, and yeah, it's just money fights from now on. And he said himself, he calls it a job. So who's to disagree with him, right?
Absolutely. All right, gentlemen. So I'm gonna throw one at you here. Swing or miss. Now, think we all know where I stand on this issue. But off of Chris Weidman's decision win over Amari Akhmedov, do we think we're seeing a rebirth of Chris Weidman? Is the All-American coming back in our lives as a top contender here?
You know, during the fight, I was making a note to some colleagues, Duffy was one of them, that Chris Weidman seemed different. And I don't mean just in terms of not wanting to walk into a big right hand. The way he approached the ground game was seemingly un-Weidman-like. Because in my mind's eye of so many years ago, having seen his ridiculously destructive ground and pound, he didn't really get that off until maybe halfway through the third round. You know, minutes of top control time had ticked off the clock before he started doing what he usually does, slamming elbows in the face or setting up some sort of arm triangle choke, anything like that, any of that horribly aggressive, destructive top game that he usually presented, he didn't really. There was, unfortunately, and I hate this phrase because it's so rude to fighters, but there was some lay and pray going on. I mean, and it was smart because he was exhausted. I understand, but it just seemed un-Weidman-like. That said, I have railed against this for a long time, that former champions have a much easier path to subsequent title shots. They only have to string a couple wins together because, hey, they're a former champion. They held the belt. Anthony Pettis, at any time of his career in the UFC going forward, is 2 or 3 wins away from a title shot. That's just how these things work, because Jose Aldo was on 2 losses and got a title shot in another division. So, loath as I am to say it, I will swing that he will make his way towards another title shot, and that hurts my heart. Because what's gonna happen when he runs into the top 10 of the division again? I mean, Derek Brunson. Do we want to see that fight? I do, but I don't, because I feel like I know what can happen. Do we want to see that's a big fight that was floated, was the Jack Hermanson fight, because that was scheduled before. But Jack Hermanson's a top 5 guy, and he's no walk in the park, and yet Weidman could get him possibly very reasonably soon. And if he wins against Jack Hermanson, he's going to be fighting Israel Adesanya or Paulo Costa. And that is terrifying. So yes, I'm swinging, but I feel like I need to go take another shower.
Allow me to break format for just a little bit here. Jay, bruh, put the drink down. Put the drink down. Chris Weidman being a top contender, even with the UFC's just allowance of former champions to earn their title shots off of much less work. I mean, we're looking at a pure murderer's row. Unless I don't know if you guys remember the Diego Sanchez Media Day interview where he speculated that perhaps the whole division would catch the bubonic plague and he would then become a title challenger. This is the sort of scenario that needs to happen for Chris Weidman to get a title shot at this point, because he's going to have to go through one other person at least. Is there anyone in the top 10 that you would favor Chris Weidman to beat at this point?
Uriah Hall and maybe Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, I was like, Gastelum's still in there, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right, Gastelum's still in there, and he's got the win over Gastelum.
And maybe Darren Till. No, hear me out, Ann. I'm not saying I want it. I'm not saying it should happen. I'm saying that the way the UFC likes to market, of all the names in the top 5, top 10, Chris Weidman is the biggest name, and the UFC is running title shots on names. See also bantamweight on 1 knockout win, dropping down the flyweight to fight for the title. So that's what I'm going with.
Darren Till kind of is his path. Like, that sounds so messed up.
Isn't it?
I mean, this was brought up to me by some of my colleagues in MMA Fighting. I hadn't even thought about it at first. And then so Darren Till came out, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, the guy has really built himself up as a name at 185 in just 2 fights. I mean, he was a name before that, of course, with his work at welterweight. And, people really seem to respond to him. So, man, you could absolutely see Weidman fighting him. And I think it's a winnable fight for him, and beating Till and getting a title shot, especially if there's some shenanigans going on with the other contenders, or, some contract negotiations behind the scenes that aren't going, the way of the other people's, and maybe Chris Weidman slides in there. So it sounds scary to say, but this definitely fell under like anything can happen in MMA. Yeah. So.
Ben, please, don't let me be the lone voice of reason on this panel today.
It's rare that you're the lone voice of reason. Normally, you're out there on a limb with us. I just can't believe none of us has yet brought up the fact that Luke Rockhold announced his intention to return to MMA today.
Of course.
Like let's smash those two junker cars against each other and see what happens, and then you know, maybe one of those guys can take on a top 10 opponent.
Would you prefer that at 205 or 185?
I would prefer it outside the UFC.
Okay.
Fair enough. 205.
What you doing?
205. Why cut the weight? Why cut the weight?
Right?
Honestly, right?
Well,
Who cares?
Well, I would say why cut the weight, except both of those guys think that they are still championship material. I mean, I don't know if you read what Rockhold said. And in Rockhold's case, I don't think it's bluster. I think he literally thinks he is still the best middleweight in the world and just kind of hit a patch of... Like, he had an answer for every bad thing that's ever happened to him.
Rockhold is. Do you guys ever watch 30 Rock? Do you guys ever see John Hamm's character on 30 Rock? Rockhold is John Hamm's character on 30 Rock. No, I'm sorry. I mean, he's very accomplished athletically. He's a great fighter. He's backed it up. But for anyone who doesn't know, John Hamm's character on Men is a super handsome, well-to-do guy who is so handsome and so successful that he has gone through life without knowing or understanding failure because everything just breaks his way, or people like him so much that they, do favors for him. So I think Luke Rockhold is just so used to success. And again, he's a great, great fighter. So add that on top of it, he's a former champion, good-looking guy, former champion. Everything probably goes his way. How can you not always feel like my next break is right around the corner? I understand it. Well, I don't understand it personally, but I wish I did.
I mean, didn't he say when they asked him why do you come back? Because I felt like it.
Yeah,
that's that kind of answer.
Why not?
Well, I mean, he's 36 in 2 months, so he's not past his prime yet. I mean he's
age-wise, he's still there, but I mean, how much
like 4 months
does he have left?
Yeah, I think he's like 4 months younger than Weidman. So yeah, smash those two, messes together. And
people want to see it. They want to see it.
Here are the three things I thought about for Chris Weidman's future. One of which I shared, I think, on this show and like one or two other shows I did last week. Chris Weidman being the next guy for Edmund Shabazian.
Oh no!
Or to build up Shabazian, or you can have Weidman Silva 3. Or the aforementioned Weidman versus Rockhold 2.
Yeah.
Those will be my three picks for what to do next with Chris Weidman. Now, if Weidman is really dead set on reliving his championship days, you're going to have to go through an Edmund Shabazian at some point. You're going to have to go through at least one of these other top tier names before we can even have that conversation and any sort of seriousness outside of promotional shenanigans. Then, of course, Silva Weidman 3, a dual retirement match, sells itself. Weidman and Rockhold, just why not? So good options.
Here's the hardest thing about this is that he is, according to Sherdog rankings, a top 15 middleweight. According to the UFC rankings, which have not updated by the taping of the show, but will update, Chris Weidman most likely will be either number 10 or number 11 on the UFC roster in middleweight. He'll be on the outside looking in of a top 10 spot with Edmund Shabazian would probably be right ahead of him. I don't feel good about that, but he beat the number 11 guy. So therefore, that translates, the transitive property brings that ranking over to him. But yeah, Ant, I don't want to speak it into life, but I've seen them, fool me too many times to realize no, they're gonna be respectful to Weidman. They're gonna handle him with caution. No, they're gonna give him Darren Till or maybe Uriah Hall, depending on if he loses against Yoel Romero, and be like, well, Uriah Hall had that kick and tough, so he's a cool thing. Let's make him it's like that.
Guys, don't worry. Chris Weidman versus Christophe Jacot, UFC Fight Island 11. Don't worry about it. All these cool options that we've brought up, they're not going to happen. Christophe Jacot is going to match him up with some weird mid-range guy. I definitely didn't see the Akhmedov fight coming, so I guess that's where my head's at. I'm like, okay, Akhmedov and then Jacot makes as much sense as Akhmedov to Till. I don't know.
I think Jacot's fighting the Floyd guy, Magomed Ankalaev-Ion. So at least he's tied up. But I know what you're thinking. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe they could get David Branch out of the weight room and see what he's up to.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move it along a bit. So I'm going to present to you some options here. Whether you like them or not, you got to pick one or you perish. So, Michael Chandler, does he stay with Bellator or does he go outside the promotion for his next fight? I'll start with you, Alex.
Gosh. Okay. Well, I was thinking about a lot today. At first, I was like, he could very likely stay in Bellator. It's his home. They'll give him an even better offer than whatever contract he was previously working with. It's hard to leave home. He's a big fish in a smaller pond than the UFC, and that's good. But that's been a good life for him, good business for him. Those Dave and Buster's commercials, I'm sure they pay well, and he's just so respected there, right? And if he goes to UFC, he'd be respected too. I feel like the best option, even though I think the competition would be a bit strange, I kind of like Chandler with the PFL. I'm not saying that's going to happen. And if he goes there, then reputation-wise, there's a lot more to lose than he would have to gain. I mean, $1 million prize, fantastic. But there really aren't any big matchups outside of maybe like Nathan Schulte. I think that's the one that'd be intriguing. Martin Held rematch from like 9 years ago. I don't know if that tickles your fancy. Boxing superstar Clay Collard. I don't know, but I do like the idea of being able to go there and win $1 million, or go 2 seasons and win $1 million. But yeah, I would say what the two options again were. I think PFL. Honestly, if he was going to make a weird choice, it wouldn't be like one championship or Ryzen. I kind of like Michael Chandler in the PFL, but it's an outside shot.
That's definitely a different perspective than I would have expected, but I'm not mad at it. Not mad at it. I mean, $1 million prize has got to be tempting to anybody, especially if you've got the accomplishments of Michael Chandler. I'm sure he would be extremely confident that he would see that to the end. However, I mean, PFL, for all intents and purposes, right now just doesn't exist. So I think that's going to play a factor into his decision making as far as when he can get booked again, especially considering how quick the fight was Friday evening. Ben, where would you put Michael Chandler?
I would love to see him just stay in Bellator, even though he's fallen just a bit off of his absolute competitive apex. He is still Bellator's greatest homegrown star by a wide margin. Probably the greatest fighter in Bellator history. Just let him finish it out there. I wish I had a sexier answer, but if he did come to the UFC, he'd be treated with respect until he lost a fight or two. It would be like the Eddie Alvarez experiment. He'd be the shiny new thing until he wasn't. And sometimes, if you're Justin Gaethje, your stardom transfers over because you win the right fights at the right time. Other times it doesn't. Why would you take that risk if you're Michael Chandler? That was my
Jay,
whole answer.
Are you selling with? Are you buying what Duffy's selling?
Well, in the confines of the original thought pattern of, okay, so he won't sign Bellator, and if he doesn't sign with one, where would he? Or if he doesn't sign with the UFC, where would he end up? If we had to choose between those kind of organizations, besides going, yeah, he'll stay in Bellator and be the big fish, or we'll go to the UFC and he'll fight Donald Cerrone, his match. He'll get leg kicked, he'll lose a fight, and we'll see what happened. See also Eddie Alvarez. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Do it.
Because of how many things I've said about this wonderful company. But if we're going to get weird, let's veer it all the way over. I want to see another Eddie Alvarez rematch. At 170 pounds, let's get weird. Maybe make a tournament around these guys. I don't care. But let him play in one championship for as long as that organization still exists, which, for all we know, it could fold in 3 weeks because of how in debt that company is. But the strange options, there are some weirdly interesting fights over there, in addition to Eddie Alvarez. Him fighting Shinya Aoki would be a very odd, kind of interesting style matchup. Yeah. Edward Foliang is another one of their top guys who is, he's been around a long time. Christian Lee, I think, is the champion after the weird tournament thing. I don't even know anymore because it was a whole mess. But if we're going to steer into the weird, then yeah, I'll go with one. Timothy Nastyukin will be a fun well, two bulls crash together and make something happen. Andy wouldn't have to cut weight anymore because one championship is full of pride and honor and doesn't allow fighters to cut weight, so they'd be respectful and honorable, and he'd be able to fight at his natural weight class, right, guys? But my argument against that is because then he'd never be able to be ranked because we don't know what he's actually weighing. But yeah, if I'm gonna go steer weird, let's go all the way weird.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Jay. I couldn't have said it any better myself. One championship is the way to go. You know, they're paying top dollar. If some of the figures that we've heard surrounding Eddie Alvarez, like,
pay that man. He would make more money with one than Bellator or the UFC. I would guarantee it.
Exactly. So the next question I have for you fellas, now we're talking about Michael Chandler's potential destinations. No one said the UFC. Now, do you think him not going to the UFC would harm his legacy at all?
I mean, I think in a certain segment, a certain more casual segment of fans, how can it not? How can it not? You know, and that's no disrespect to Bellator or some of the really good fighters that Michael Chandler has fought there, but the age we live in, the UFC is the be all and end all for many, many fans. And there's so many good matchups in there. You know, that's the other thing is we got to see him fight, of course, a former UFC champion and Benson Henderson twice. And that was great. But I think for some people that's just kind of a taste and it doesn't really answer the questions, you know. Just to kind of draw obviously a very broad parallel. Look, it happened to Fedor. I mean, look, we have Fedor Emelianenko, maybe the greatest fighter of all time. You have people who say, oh, but he never fought in the UFC. This weekend, we're seeing a fight between Cormier and Miocic. Will this determine the greatest heavyweight in MMA history? It's like, whoa, what? As if Fedor never happened, right? But again, it's understandable at this point in time why some people say that. I mean, people could educate themselves, sure, but that's just sort of how things are. So, I mean, I think for those of us in the media, we definitely would like to see Chandler fight in the UFC. One, it'd just be as fun as hell, and two, I mean, it would answer a lot of questions, you know. But if he never does, I would view him as one of the best lightweights of this era, regardless. But it would be nice to have just a little more evidence to back that up.
I'll step on this one because I wanted to think of something, a thought experiment, if you will. When you think about ranking fighters and ranking them as a whole, the UFC gets some bias because of the way it has always existed. However, it does because of level of competition and the strength of schedule the fighters have had to go into it. You look at these wins against these established fighters that have been in the UFC for X amount of time and go, okay, well, this makes sense because of who he's beaten. Like, for example, I had this discussion with some of the Sherdog staff members about whether Michael Chandler's win over Benson Henderson was deserving of him being ranked among the top 15 lightweights in the world. And I argued against it when he was going against Diego Ferreira, who is, you know, an up-and-comer from Ben Duffy's neck of the woods. And he's an entertaining fighter. He's got a lot going for him. And he just tapped out Anthony Pettis. So we have Michael Chandler, who just smoked a former UFC champion, and Diego Ferreira, who just tapped out a former UFC champion in the division. So you look at that in the strength of schedule, and I ended up going with Ferreira because the wins he had before that just seemed better than Sidney Outlaw at 160, and then losing to Patricio Pitbull. And it was a tough thing because I looked at Michael Chandler and his career. And he's faced everybody that basically you could fight in the division in Bellator. I mean, he has the most Bellator fights, tied with David Rickles, whom he knocked out. He has among the most wins in the company, who tied with Patricio Pitbull, who knocked him out. You know, it's we're here, and this is as high as it can probably ever go as far as lightweights go. And I feel like if he went with the UFC, he would be able to just answer that question that Alex posed, is if could he hack it? But you know that if he were signed to the UFC, not only would they not pay him what he deserves, but they would try and punish him to have a UFC greater than Bellator party. It would be, the matchmaking would be, he'd fight Dustin Poirier, which, by the way, that is a spectacular fight. I would pay money. I could headline a pay-per-view for me. But welcome to the UFC, pal. Like we were joking earlier. When Eddie Alvarez was signed to the UFC, he had to fight Donald Cerrone, who at that time was a top 5 lightweight, who kicked his legs out from underneath him and smashed his face up. And it was just that kind of the welcome to the UFC moment, like, you know, players greeting each other in the NFL. There's so many fights in the top 15 for the UFC, for Michael Chandler, that I want to happen. Cowboy fight, fun. Diego Ferreira, I mentioned. Paul Felder, Dan Hooker, Tony, come on. All these fights are the fan in me wins. The fan in me goes, I want these fights. So I think when we're at that moment, we're right so close to it happening, and you can visualize the fights, I think it would hurt us for that moment. It's just to what could have been. That's all. I think it's a what could have been for me.
Guys, I love lists. I bet you guys do too. So let's. I know we can dwell. I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but I did want to ask. Okay, so let's look at these hypothetical rankings. I think we can all agree 4 guys in the UFC that we would rank above Chandler: Khabib, Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier. Definitively, those 4 would be above.
Yeah.
So then we start getting to. And then you said, Jay, you would put Diego Ferreira above Chandler. So he's definitely not in your top 5.
No.
Okay. And then, so where would you fall? Maybe in the 7th. So let's Kevin Lee. Who do you guys think? He's better, rank higher than Kevin Lee or lower than Kevin Lee?
Depends on what Kevin Lee shows up that day. Kevin Lee at his best, I think beats Chandler.
Oh, good point.
So Kevin Lee with staph on his chest does not make the cut.
Depends on how big the staph is, because he had staph on his chest when he knocked out Gillespie.
That's true.
Charles Oliveira.
Ooh.
That's a tricky. That's the one. I mean, we'd want to see them fight. Like, I think that would be a great fight. But what would you guys say? Higher or lower right now?
Oliveira.
Based
Lower.
Yeah.
Chandler would be lower.
Yes.
So you guys see Chandler maybe in the 8 to 10 range if you jump to the UFC. Like, oh, here we go. Dan Hooker, Paul Felder.
I think Hooker beats him. Felder. I think Chandler gets through Felder in a war.
I think that's a fight of the night right there. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and this is and Alex, I'm glad you're taking us to the actual rankings and having us look at everything, because the speculation, I think, is helpful for Chandler's legacy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if he were to just not ever touch the UFC, it's always the what if, and that what if just sounds so attractive. Because if he comes to the UFC and they throw him to the lion's den, it does it just destroys his legacy. Yes. Look at Hector Lombard, who before coming to the UFC was viewed as a top-notch killer. And typically what the UFC does when they bring someone who was a champion in another organization, at least another one of the top flight organizations, the Strikeforce, Bellator, what have you, they don't just match you up in something tough. They match you up against someone tough who is very hard to look good against. So Eddie Alvarez fighting Donald Cerrone, especially Donald Cerrone at that time. Hector Lombard fighting Tim Boetsch, who has been known to just make you look pretty miserable even if you do beat him. Jake Shields versus Martin Kampmann, the dark horse of the welterweight division for years. Mm-hmm. So this is what we would expect them to do to Michael Chandler. Oh, yeah. Michael Chandler would go in there and fight, an Ally Quinta, who is very difficult to look really good against, and win or lose, it does a bit to take some shine off of his name. So without him coming to the UFC, I mean, it's not like we're getting anything new. We're not getting anything new to destroy the legacy. His legacy is Bellator. Mm-hmm. He is Bellator.
Oh yes.
So I think there is a lot to be there's a lot to be earned as far as legacy is concerned by keeping that train going, as opposed to going down this dark path where you're probably going to lose a lot more than you're going to win, depending on how you're matched up.
Well, look at Justin Gaethje. They made him fight Michael Johnson, a guy who can smoke Dustin Poirier or get boxed up by Nate Diaz. So that is another example of it's real tough to look good against Michael Johnson sometimes.
Marlon Moraes and Rafael Assunção.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That hurt his stock too.
Right, big time. So there's a serious effort to make you suffer if you held a belt at a competitor organization. And we know Michael Chandler will probably be entering the UFC. I would say, as far as reputation is concerned, maybe Jake Shields would be the only one that'll be considered higher. you know, by the time Eddie Alvarez got to the UFC, he had already lost to Chandler, and won a very questionable decision in his final Bellator fight. Yeah, I mean, Jake Shields was coming off the Dan Henderson win when he came into the UFC, so that's probably the only other name. And we saw how close Martin Kampman came to derailing that train. I think Chandler does himself a lot of favors legacy-wise by staying out of the UFC right now.
I just would add that Alex brought up the example of Fedor Emelianenko, where because he never fought in the UFC, even though he had a run of destroying former UFC champions, not especially out of their prime, that was pretty impressive. But it leaves the question mark. It allows people to revise or disparage his legacy. But the flip side of it is that Chandler, I don't think, is in his fighting prime anymore. I think he's a little off his prime. I don't think prime Chandler just gets iced by Patricio Pitbull the way he did. So think of Ben Askren. Askren came over to the UFC and just gave everybody ammunition to say, yeah, he was overrated all along. Organizations outside the UFC suck. He was just fattening up on, Bellator level competition or the
one championship.
Thank you. Well, I was trying to think of some specific names he took on there, and the fact that I couldn't.
That's the point.
Yeah, the fact that I couldn't kind of says a lot. I would hate for that to happen to Chandler almost worse. Because I do think at his best, Chandler was a top 10, if not top 5 lightweight, who just didn't have the level of competition to be able to prove it. If you look at his best wins, they don't stack up against the best wins of even a middling top 10 lightweight in the UFC. Like your best wins are Dave Rickles and Brent Premise and a very, very faded Benson Henderson. He just hasn't had the chance to prove it. And now he may never, because like I say, even if he came over now, I think we're getting a somewhat diminished version of him.
All right, fellas. So let's move things along here. Now, we've seen a lot of fouls recently. I mean, we had one event where there was like a groin kick counter going on Twitter. I think that count got up to 10. We've seen all sorts of eye pokes and fence grabs and grabbing the shorts and whatnot. We haven't seen necessarily a whole lot of referee involvement when it came to these fouls. So is it time for refs to start cracking down on blatant fouls going on in mixed martial arts?
I mean, look, I gotta represent for my boy Jed Meshew here. I gotta go the other way. I loosen up even more. Look, this is the way fouls are handled. I don't want to say in the UFC. I think wherever, because these guys officiate in other promotions. It's a farce. It's a farce for the most part. I mean, the warnings for like multiple groin kicks or multiple pokes in the eye, or if someone grabs grabbing a fence, one of the most egregious. Knock the hand off. Well, I like when they do that. That I think is good. But one of the most egregious, like fight-changing fouls that you can do, and I know it doesn't get the attention of a great crack to the cup, but it is so huge when someone stops a takedown, which could have literally won someone a round or even a fight, depending how that person's ground game is, right? So if they're not gonna crack down, then I say go the opposite way, and I just say, look, let's acknowledge the fact that both guys get a foul, both guys get an eye poke, both guys get a fence grab. If they headbutt each other, whatever, no pause in the action. Let's go on. Just keep fighting. Are you still conscious? Do you still have both eyeballs after that poke? Get back into it. Jed and I encourage cheating at the highest levels. You got to cheat to win. Again, you get at least one groin kick. Anyone who doesn't do one groin kick, eye poke, or fence grab during a fight, you are a fool. You've got to do everything you can to win. And I do want to add one thing though. I thought it was hilarious on Saturday. Referee Chris Tyone, when he was doing the Nazat Haqparast for Alexander Munoz fight. Haqparast took a low blow, and I don't know if I'd never heard this before. Tony went over to him and said, "No retaliations."
Yes, okay, I heard that too.
And I was like, "I've never heard that. Maybe that's normal. I've just never." So if anyone,
normal.
Like,
that was
nobody was even thinking of that until you said it, dude.
That was weird.
You just incepted that whole idea. Now we're going to be like baseball.
I guess so. Maybe they are cracking. Maybe that's their way of cracking down. Don't kick them back. But that was new to me. The Chris Tyone, no retaliations.
Oh, very good points. The only flaw I see with your argument is that you reference the Between the Links paper champ, Jed Meshew. Jay, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion, sir?
As somebody who looks and has studied Dundasso for a while, I'm kind of on the fence about if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. But, you know, I hate the idea of having. I mean, if we run it the way Alex wants, Chet Conger was the eternal champion.
Yeah,
and he'll beat everybody. He'll beat Vitaly Minakov, and he'll beat all the rest of them. You know, Ryan Bader's got no chance in hell. So I don't know. I think there actually should be, especially, and I do agree 100% with Alex. Fence grabs are not enforced enough. I think it was actually Chris Tayoni in the Yana Kunitskaya fight with Julia Stolyarenko, where Yana was holding her in place, and you could see at a certain angle she had the fence. So, you know, in addition to her muscling her around, she had her secured in place by holding onto the fence. And I thought whoever the referee was at the time stopped the action and took the position away from her. So at least for it, after 12 fence grabs, they finally did something. But I think if you have to get to the point, and this is my draconian's point of view, if you have to get to the point as an officiating member that you have to physically slap a fighter's hand to get them out of the fence, you need to do something more than slap their hand away, because they're going to do it again, or that's all you did. So any progress that they had stopping the takedown or keeping the position, you just slap their hand and that's it. A literal slap on the wrist doesn't cut it for me. And I understand the referee's point of view. They don't want to interfere in the fight. They don't want to be a part of the fight unless they have to be. But when we're counting 10 groin shots in an 8-fight card, things have gotten out of hand. This past weekend when we had 5, Paul Felder's like, oh boy, better start counting, and counted during the broadcast. And it's a joke, but it isn't, because you get kicked in the groin during a fight, you're not the same. Just straight up. You get kicked twice? Are you kidding me? You get kicked twice in the groin, then, you know, forget about it. You're all screwed up. And most fighters don't get a hard warning at the time. Hey, you do that again, you get 2, but that's all you get. And then they get an eye poke and everything like that. No, I think there should be not a hard and fast rule, but it has to matter. Because if not, what's the point?
And we're not talking about people like Joe Schmoes like us, like cup checking each other out in the parking lot. You know what I mean? This is like Edson Barbosa, like rifling off an inside leg kick right into your. That'll change your life. Yeah. Forget about losing a fight. You know what I mean? So yeah, Jay,
what was it, Gilbert Ivel in Pride? Yeah, that changes everything. I don't want that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, what's the point of having rules if they're not going to be enforced? To anyone who would complain about the referee interfering, if you didn't give the referee anything to interfere about, they wouldn't be interfering. So just sounds like you just followed the rules and then there's no penalties involved. It just seems pretty simple, the unified rules, however flawed that rule set may be in its various iterations across state lines. They exist for a reason. So all right, so now let's move on to the greatest title segment in all of media. That is, I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. So this is where we share something that surprised us or didn't over the course of the past week, whether they be the fights themselves, the pre-fight coverage, the post-fight coverage, or anything combat sports related. So let's start with our guest, Mr. Lee here. Alex, what is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
By the way, Mr. Falcons, one of the greatest, TV censored alternatives ever. Though I don't know if you guys ever heard this one, Melon Farmer.
I heard that one.
Yeah, Melon Farmer.
I heard that one in a TV edit of The Breakfast Club that played
that
on TV forever. But in hindsight, I'm like, was that better? Because that almost sounds like racist.
Oh God, I didn't even think about that. Oh.
I mean, it was the whitest cast ever, so they were safe at that time. But yeah.
Well, that happens, Larry, when you fight a stranger in the Alps.
We were going to name a segment Melon Farmer, but now I have second thoughts.
I feel uncomfortable now. But I'll say what surprised me, and some people might not see this as a surprise, But I was really surprised, I would say, and I think how positive the reception was to Valerie Loureda's performance and post-fight performance. So anyone who saw that, she had this huge knockout in her third pro fight against Tara Graf. Some people said Tara was a kind of a sneaky upset pick, so there was some vindication there. It wasn't like an all-around outstanding performance. You know, I saw a lot of people on social media kind of showing some consternation about how cautious Loureda was. But look, she's a traditional martial artist, right? That's the way she's going to fight. She's not going into the brawl. It's only her third pro fight. She looked like someone in her third pro fight. This is how it is, guys. So, and of course, going into it, you know, Bellator's pushed her very hard. She has a very strong social media presence. So the room for backlash there is just so easy. It's so easy for a fighter to have success in that situation and then still have make it go the other way. People hate her, but she beat her and then did this great dance. One of the best dances I've ever seen post fight. Ryan Jim's up there, Valentina Shevchenko, Betchko. Well, so Jay, I'm glad you bring that up because Betchko dancing is lovely, but I would say technically not, not precise. I consider myself a very strong casual dance fan. I think so. So you think you can dance the greatest show on television? So I have a casual eye for dancing, a little bit technique wise. And I thought Valerie Loureda, she hit it. That's not a technical term, but she hit it. She got down, in that move, and it was spontaneous. It was fun. It was awkward because when the medic was coming over to check on her, and when he saw that she was doing her thing, he was like. Okay, all right, go ahead, girl, you do your thing, and I'll check you out after. So it was a very real moment, and I actually think people liked that. The same people who hated her before, hated whatever her social media persona, hated how hard that she's been pushed this hard by Bellator. They're going to hate her anyway. That probably didn't change. But I think there's a lot of people who saw her for the first time, and this is exactly what Bellator wants. This is a fresh face. They gave her a platform. It wasn't on the main card, unfortunately, but anyone who saw it, I think, was like, okay, this is someone I want to watch. And it doesn't always go that way for Bellator's prospects. Heather Hardy, another great, very strong female fighter, great boxer, who they wanted to push, and her results were mixed, and things didn't always work out. So far, Loureda hitting all the buttons. And I am surprised just from what I saw. Again, this is a glance at social media, so this is anecdotal. A lot of positivity, and a lot of people saying, yeah, she legitimately sounds some of the critics. And if she wants to do her thing on Instagram, let her live, and I hope that's the kind of positive attitude I think I want more people to take.
All right, not a bad one there. I will say though, if you're going to talk about post-fight dances and not mention Renan Barão, disrespectful, absolutely disrespectful. Ben, what is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, it's kind of fitting that we just had a lengthy conversation about the breakdown in rules and the pure anarchy we're seeing in the MMA cage in the last month or two, the transition towards ultimate Krav Maga that we seem to be moving towards. Because one and done UFC fighter Roman Bogatov has been released. For those who don't remember, he fought Leonardo Santos at UFC 251. Goodness, is it just 4 weeks ago?
Yeah.
4 weeks ago.
4 years ago.
It feels like 4 years ago. It was just 4 weeks ago. And when I say that he had 2 blatant groin strikes and an eye poke in a single round, remember that that's not from the card that had all the fouls. Like, there's a whole new normal as far as fouls go. And the funny thing is that he was released and no real reason was given, but it is unusual for an undefeated fighter to come into the UFC, drop a single decision, and be gone. Especially in this era of COVID where they're just needing to take whatever bodies they can and push them into the cage. But it says a lot about how lackadaisical we are about fouls, that in the wake of his release from the UFC, and keep in mind, he lost a decision to Leonardo Santos after getting 2 points deducted in the third round for an eye poke that came after 2 groin shots. And there is actual argument over whether he was released because of possibly the dirtiest round I've ever seen in the UFC, or because one of his cornermen had a neo-Nazi tattoo on his elbow. Like even there, they can't just say, okay, this dude is dirty as hell, we're going to send him back to Dagestan to win some more fights while following the rules and maybe give him another shot. But I was genuinely surprised that Bogatov was let go. He was 4 years ago in my memory. I figured I'd see him again. It's in some fight in 3 months. I'd be like, oh yeah, him. I mean, luckily for him, Leonardo Santos, one of the oldest men in the division, probably has had all the kids he wanted. So, you know, maybe it is a no harm, no foul situation, but I am not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Wait, are you saying he should have fought Alex Oliveira?
Alex Oliveira could have used this man about 5 years ago.
Jay, I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week.
So I guess today we're having a Bellator party, and that's okay by me because I want to talk about an unexpected coup. We'll call it that because I don't know how else to define what on earth happened. Thursday happened that past week, and out of nowhere, out of nowhere, because Corey Anderson, former top-ranked light heavyweight, number 4 in the UFC rankings, number 5 on the Sherdog rankings, so a top 5 guy, just asked for his release. The UFC said sure, and he said I'm out, and signed with Bellator. Just bang bang. It was a bang bang play, as they say, and that it completely came out of left field. The only thing that has happened of any note since Corey Anderson's knockout loss to Jan Blachowicz is a tragic situation where he was out hiking and fell directly on his face, and the side of his face was almost destroyed. He fell on gravel, and it was a very, very unfortunate situation. If you want to see something terrible happen to a person's face, go on Corey Anderson's Instagram. It's nasty. And he was in the hospital for a long time. So Corey Anderson is now a Bellator fighter, which he joins former UFC top fighter Ryan Bader, former UFC top fighter Phil Davis, former apocalyptic UFC fighter Alessio Sakara. So that UFC light heavyweight division is starting to creep over there. But they're building a division at 205, and that's very surprising. Corey Anderson, I wouldn't say in terms of name recognition or just power and I don't know, reputation, doesn't seem like that big of a get, but this is actually a huge get. I don't think Ryan Bader was ranked that high when he went over Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald. I think this is a much larger get for Bellator than people are thinking. And plus, people lamented his fight style and spoke volumes about how he needed to have a title shot and how he deserved one a long time ago and didn't get one, which I agree. This is big. This is a big, unexpected, I'm out, see you later moment, because the UFC doesn't share well. So we don't know much more information, to grant a release and say, oh, have fun, pal. It makes you wonder if the UFC is like, oh, thank God we don't have to put him on the main card anymore. But this is a good get for Bellator. Like, this guy he could fight the winner of Lyoto Machida and Phil Davis. That'd be an interesting fight. And then he could fight for the Bellator light heavyweight title, or whatever that's worth. But yeah, Corey Anderson, Bellator. What?
Yeah, definitely caught me off guard.
Yeah.
That was some surprising news to wake up to. I think it was Friday when that broke. Mm-hmm. So as far as the Corey Anderson thing, it just made me think. So his, with his face getting crushed essentially in that accident, like, wonder if they thought from like a medical standpoint, like he's damaged goods.
Interesting.
And because Dana White was very vocal about how he was okay with Rory McDonald leaving because he didn't think he'd ever be the same after the second Robbie Lawler fight. So we've seen this sort of thing happen before. However, if Corey Anderson being released possibly because of a medical incident, reminiscent of 50 Cent getting shot and dropped from Columbia Records, only to reemerge with G Unit, Shady, and Aftermath. So I don't know. Corey Anderson might do some crazy things. I'm just saying. If we're any precedent right there set by 50. But anyway, I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. I was actually very much looking forward to going to this fight. Originally scheduled for September 12th, I believe, in Carson, which is just minutes away from my home. However, now it's postponed to November 28th, which is dangerously close to both Thanksgiving and my wife's birthday, meaning I'm not sure if I can go to this fight now. I am not sure. So, oh, man, things are getting tough in the Walker household. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. Life does you dirty sometimes. Now,
is that fight happening? Do you think there's a chance it just doesn't happen?
I think it's going to happen. It's just too much money involved. In fact, it's held up because of money, because they want to secure pay-per-view rights and international distribution and whatnot. So I think it's business why it's held up. I think it's going to happen. Whether it should happen or not is a whole other story. But I'm okay with it because I'm a disturbed human being. So
is it business that was what tied it up? Because I know that Mike Tyson fought a shark last night, so I don't know. I didn't watch the Mike Tyson versus Shark on Shark Week. Did he get foremaned? Little nip.
I believe the shark actually ate him. If I read the report, the shark actually completely ate him.
Okay.
So that a slight delay in the fight, unfortunately.
So he's going to fight his way out. Then he fights shark.
Yeah. He has to, and then reconstitute himself, and then he will. So it's going to be even more amazing. Guys, does it sell $1 million?
I already bit the shark's ear off, so I don't know where you guys are getting your information from.
Does it sell $1 million, guys? Does this pay for you do $1 million?
No. I actually, depending on the price point,
$50 is too much.
$49.99.
No.
$39. If it's $40, we're getting there now. $50 at this point. If they do like what Golden Boy did and go, we're not doing.
How much did Logan Paul and KSI the first one? How much?
800,000. Oh, and how much it cost? Like $5.
15.
Oh, wow.
The KSI thing. It was like they wanted kids, they wanted kids to be able to order. I think reasonably. So I think it was like no more than $10 if I remember. It was super, and it did like 800,000 buys. So how much? What do you guys think for this one? At a $50 price point, what do you think?
250,000.
I was going to say 200,000 at $50.
We go with 3. Yeah.
Wow, that's low.
Yeah, because I think you're going to get a segment of the diehard boxing fans from the Tyson and Roy Jones era that just are curious. I mean, they know it's going to be sloppy or it's going to be a total shit show, whatever, but they want to see Tyson. I know my dad was a diehard Tyson fan and a diehard Roy Jones Jr. fan. He will buy this despite him not buying. Yeah, he hasn't bought a boxing or an MMA pay-per-view in forever. And I'm sure the last time he did that, I was the one who sat beside him and pressed order on the remote control. So you're going to have people like that. And you're going to have like the lone knuckleheads like ourselves who will just watch anybody fight if you put like graphics on it and, and Bob Bennett is standing off to the corner. So that's probably what's going to happen. But I don't think it's no more than 250,000 of these people willing to shell out some money. But
for $50, that's a hard sell.
At a lower price point. Now, maybe the state of the world will be different at the end of November. I certainly hope so. But if we assume that we're under the current conditions where bars aren't open in a lot of places, if social distancing is a thing and you can't have more than 10 people of your place, so that rules out a lot of fight parties, you got to put it at a lower price point just so you can get more individuals in their homes to order.
There's also, I don't know what's up with these Triller. Like Triller is the social media platform that is like promoting and carrying it. I have no idea what the part they're playing. If like you subscribe to Triller and you get the fight for free, or if it's like Fight Pass, you have to order it through Triller. I'm in my mid-30s. I have no idea what a Triller is. I'm still trying to figure out TikTok. So, but maybe when they add in those numbers, it breaks 500,000. I'm honestly not sure. I don't know.
Oh, you're in Canada, right?
I'm up in Canada. Yes. I don't even know. So I don't even know if Triller is legal up here.
Well, TikTok is going to be illegal here, so we're even.
I think most of us had not heard of Triller until this fight was announced, right? I would imagine that's the first time we heard of Triller, right?
Yeah, I had no idea what that is. I still have no clue what it's all about, and I'm sure not going to find out either.
Well, there you go. Here's your promotion, Triller. Give us all a free pay-per-view buy for.
Give me like a
ticket, online ticket for this fight. Come on,
and like one of those water bottles. All right. Which actually I used my DAZN water bottle for the first time this past week.
Oh,
quite delightful. All right, so now let's move on to the speed bag, and this is where I get to flex my authority on you mofos. So I'm going to go ahead, grab the clock. I'm going to put 10 seconds on the clock. You gentlemen will have said time to answer these questions. Let's go ahead and start off with the homie Ben, who will be the guinea pig for this week. So Alex, just to let you know, I run a tight ship. My clock deserves respect. Please disrespect my clock so I can flex my authority. Now, here we go. The first question for you, Ben. Should the UFC have released Ray Borg? You have 10 seconds.
Yes, it sounds heartless, but this isn't just a UFC thing. If you don't show up to work, you do lose your job.
And Jay.
Yep. Yeah, I agree too. I think this was an unfortunate situation. I feel for the guy. I know there's a lot of personal things, but you miss 9 fight calls. So what are you going to do?
All right. And Alex.
No, he's still young. He just turned 27 last week. There's still some entertaining fights he can put on 135. If they're not paying him a stipend or any other bills for him, what's the harm in keeping him on the roster?
All right. And now, second question. I'll begin with you, Jay. With Yair-Rodriguez versus Zabit Magomed scratched again, is this becoming the new Khabib versus Tony? You have 10 seconds.
No, I have to say the UFC artistic department is probably tearing their hair out, having to write up all these long posters, then getting them canceled. Yeah, this is a drag, man.
Alex.
No, the honor will soon belong to Zombie Ortega. But I'm just kidding. Shout outs to Jose Youngs. I know he wants that fight to happen. That's going to happen. Zombie Ortega's going to happen. Yair-Zabit and Khabib Tony will also still happen.
Ben.
Yes, complete with the whole bullshit angle of people accusing one or the other fighter of being scared.
All right.
Quack.
All right, so Alex, you will begin this next round here, and your question is Magomed Ankalaev versus Ion Cutelaba 2, a more interesting rematch than the UFC 252 main event. You have 10 seconds.
I mean, I have some Miocic-Cormier fatigue, but come on, this is going to determine the greatest heavyweight in UFC history, and it's the last fight of Cormier's career. Give it some respect, but Ankalaev-Cutelaba is interesting for sure.
Ben.
Maybe if you're Tyler Treese and you just want to see shit fall apart and be a total travesty.
Jay.
I think it's a more entertaining fight. I mean, I know this is a terrible thing to say. I think Ankalaev-Cutelaba for all 60 seconds will be more entertaining than this rubber match. It's weird to say, I know.
All right. Okay, so now the clock changes to 30 seconds, in which I will answer all the questions back to back to back. And the clock will start after the first question begins. So, should UFC have released Ray Borg? Yes, it's time to let it go. This man has so many missed bookings listed on Tapology. It's ridiculous. I know some of those weren't his fault, but at some point he's got to have responsibility. So goodbye, Ray Borg. I'm sure he'll fight his way back. Yair-Rodriguez versus Zabit Magomed is turning into Khabib versus Tony 2. I just don't believe it's going to happen until they actually step foot in the cage. And Cutelaba and Ankalaev too, come on now. Let's not disrespect DC Stipe. This is the greatest thing ever. Come on, Jay. And I say come on, Jay, because he had that question. This is his outline. Thanks, Jay. That was highly disrespectful.
Have a little fun.
Highly disrespectful.
I can't spell the name.
Speaking of UFC 252, it's this weekend. The fight that is, in my opinion, I know Alex gave some pushback early in the show. The paper champ Jet Meshew gave me some pushback about this last week, but Stipe versus DC3 determines the greatest heavyweight of all time, fellas. Am I right?
I don't want to go first.
I mean, Casey Leiden would probably take your head off if you said that the winner of this fight was a better heavyweight than Fedor.
Casey can get this work, you know where I live.
I would make the case that they are. And you're not going to find a bigger Fedor fan than me, but top-level heavyweights in top-level promotions at this point are simply facing a different routine than Fedor did during his prime. For a fun thought exercise, go back to Fedor's career and find me his best 3 wins in a row. He had a huge unbeaten streak, but it is good fighter, great fighter, Zuluzinho. He had multiple fights where he did not have to be the best Fedor in the world. I mean, at this point, the winner of this fight, I would love to just kind of stack up their accomplishments against Fedor's, just fight for fight, win for win, loss for loss, and kind of see who comes out on top. I don't think Fedor's position as the greatest heavyweight of all time is sacrosanct anymore.
In terms of Fedor's best 3 win streak, Big Nog, TK, and Crow Cop. I mean, TK being the weak link, but that's still pretty impressive. But no, I've been going back and forth on this for a while. I think it depends on who wins. because Daniel Cormier had a lengthy stint at light heavyweight, and he racked up some good names along the way. But in terms of wins at heavyweight, Derrick Lewis, Stipe, the first fight, obviously, if he wins the second one, okay, that's impressive. Roy Mir, Jeff Monson, and Josh Barnett. Josh Barnett was good, and Bigfoot Silva. So no, I don't think DC would be the best heavyweight ever if he wins this fight. But Stipe, with 2 wins over DC and Ngannou, JDS, Overeem, Verdum, Arlovsky, Mark Hunt, Gonzaga. Hey, there's that Roy Nelson guy again. I think I could give it to Stipe if he wins this rubber match. I think I could, because show me a weak fight in that list. Arlovsky was making that resurgence in Arlovsky 4.0 or I forget which transformation Arlovsky had. If he was done with the wham hair, so he wasn't looking like George Michael. So I don't remember which version of him, but realistically, that all-time killer list is, yeah, you're not going to be able to stack up a thing like that. Whereas I think DC will have the Max Holloway syndrome, where he'll beat one of the best guys twice. When Max beat Jose Aldo, but you'll say, oh, he needed a few more wins. And if this is DC's last fight ever, if he goes out beating Stipe a second time and he retires with, I don't know if he wouldn't retire the champion, because he'd retire at the end of the fight, so he'd only be the champion as he gets the belt and then hands it back to Dana. I don't know how that would work. So yes and no.
See, and as far as the weak links on Stipe's record, the only one I can think of is Fabio Maldonado on crazy short notice.
Yeah,
that's the only one where you can put a question mark on that. Now, we can, as far as Daniel Cormier, I mean, we can question like the length of time that he spent at heavyweight, but all of those are high quality wins. Once you get after the Jeff Monson fight, essentially, where it was always the top of the top guys. And they were normally coming off of some sort of big wins of their own,
like Darren Sterling.
Yeah, like Bigfoot Silva. He fought him after the fight after the Fedor fight.
Yeah, and look, and I think Jay did an amazing job there of isolating just the heavyweight wins. Because if you made a separate list of the light heavyweight wins and heavyweight wins, and you didn't show the name, you just said there's the list of who this guy's beaten. There's no way anyone would look at that list and say, oh, this is the resume of the greatest heavyweight of all time. Now, what he does benefit from though is speculation. It is not hard for us in our minds to imagine, could Cormier in his prime have beaten Mirko Cro Cop in his prime? I would say yes. No, we don't know. Again, that Fedor's done it. We don't know if Cormier could do it. I think he could. Do we think he could beat Big Nog in his prime? I would pick Cormier. So I understand why people would be willing to anoint both Miocic and Cormier, depending who wins this weekend, as the greatest heavyweight of all time, period, UFC or non-UFC. Again, I'm more with Jay's argument. I think Stipe has the stronger case. If he's not close to retirement, if he gets 2 more years to build that resume, he very realistically could pass Fedor. He doesn't have that mystique of Fedor, of course, or benefit from that general mystique of pride. So it's always going to be hard for people to accept that. But he'd have to at least be 1A, 1B if people don't want to compare eras, right? But the Cormier argument, if people want to make it, it's by looking at other guys' resumes and saying, well, if he had been fighting at heavyweight and had gone to MMA a little bit earlier, could he have beaten this guy? Could he have beaten Mark Coleman? Could he have beaten Kevin Randleman? Could he have beaten Mark Hunt? And probably yeah. So he gets speculative points, but again, I'm one for rewarding what have you actually done, right? Because it's not fair to the guys who actually went in there and did it.
All right. Anything you want to add to this, Ben, before we chug it along?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and close the show out with a little throwback to my old live chat show that Jay used to do the behind the scenes work on for Sure Dog, The Trenches, and we're gonna wrap things up with who you got for UFC 252. Junior Dos Santos versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Alex, who you got?
But let me preface all of this by saying I do the predictions to MMA Fighting, and I am terrible at them. I'm terrible at picking fights. I'm okay at writing about fights and previewing them. When it comes to pulling the trigger and making that pick, just horrible. I don't know what's wrong with me. I cannot bet. And my other advice is, by the way, the only way to win gambling in MMA is do not gamble on MMA ever. It's too unpredictable. So I'm picking Jairzinho. I think we see the classic Junior Dos Santos. Maybe box him up for a little bit, but there's just too much power now, and I just don't know if JDS can take those kinds of fights anymore. So he's going to get caught with something and he's going to go down.
All right, Jay, who you got?
I'm going the opposite. I think JDS will be able to box him up, and I think that will cause issues. I mean, really, we know there's two ways to beat Rosenstrike, but only one of them worked. But one of them was so close to working. One of them was this close, besides a weird Dan Miragliotta stoppage and a lip that was worse than Robbie Lawler's. It was a question mark there. But Francis Ngannou just kind of waded in like, a human windmill and clocked him in the face a few times and finished him in 20 seconds. So that's not really a path that JDS is going to follow. But JDS, I mean, his last two losses were Blaydes when he took him down and smashed him up. He clipped him with an overhand right. He didn't even have to take him down. And Ngannou, who walked in like a human windmill and did that thing. Before then, JDS took out Derrick Lewis. He showed Tai Tuivasa the 50 states. He, boxed up Blagoy Ivanov. I think JDS, who is, by the way, still only 36 years young, I think he can stay composed enough to avoid that crazy knockout punch and ride out the fight. But man, his chin is not what it used to be, so Alex should be right on the money here.
All right, Ben, who you got?
I am cautiously going with JDS in this one, just to successfully pull off what Overeem almost managed. But I could look really dumb in about 90 seconds.
I'm kind of with you on that one. I'm going with JDS as well. It just seems like the more technical, just fundamentally gifted, or fundamentally skilled striker should be able to defeat Rosenstruck, as long as JDS doesn't do anything really, really stupid. Like if he doesn't chase him, run away like he did with Ngannou and get clipped from behind. I think if he avoids things like that, he should win. We've seen Rosenstruck vulnerable to the more technical, more sound, more disciplined striker in the past with Overeem, until that final shot that split Overeem's face in half. So I think JDS pulls this off, but I mean, I am not running to a bookie with any predictions, and no money is going to be on the line for me on this one. All right, so who you got? Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. Jay, I'll start with you.
I don't ever want to be the naysayer, because I want to see a young prospect, an exciting guy, make their way up the division. I really want to see it. I picked Eddie Wineland. I think it was the only member of the Sherdog staff to pick Eddie Wineland to beat Sean O'Malley, and he was winning for the first 90 seconds of the fight and then got cracked, and he was done like dinner. I feel like, gritting my teeth, I can say that I think that Chito Vera can kind of he's been doing this long enough. He's been in the UFC way longer than most of us think. I mean, he's had a dozen fights or so, which is very surprising if you think about Chito Vera as a UFC mainstay. I don't know, but he's a reliable action fighter. All of his last 7 wins were by finish. So I think this could be a real fun back and forth test that's going to show Sean O'Malley, like, welcome to the topper echelon of the division, young man. And I can see Chito Vera getting his hand raised simply by not falling for some of the silly, flashy stuff that a lot of guys get caught by. So yeah, I'm going to go Vera by exciting decision, I think.
All right, Ben, what say you?
I am leaning very slightly in the direction of O'Malley, but it just seems absolutely bizarre that he's a 3-1 favorite.
Yeah.
Just Vera he's faced better competition. He just barely lost a close one to Song Yadong, but before that he'd won 5 or 6 straight. I feel as though this should be a pick'em fight. So if I were the betting type, I'd be dumping some money on Vera just on sheer value. But when it comes time to pull the trigger, I will probably lean O'Malley.
All right, Alex, who you got?
Guys, I'm all in on the Sugar Show, and only because I'm like this with a lot of athletes in general. If you win me over, I'm probably going to stick with you for a long time, maybe for too long, because I was very skeptical of the Sean O'Malley experience right away. A great highlight in Contender Series. Pretty good performance against Tyrion Ware. I thought the Andre Sukumtats fight was one of the most frustrating fights I've ever seen, at least the way it ended, though he did look good in that fight, and he won it. The Quinones fight, I don't know why, it just didn't register with me. So up until that point, I was still kind of like, this kid's clearly good. I'm like a little bit like you, Jay. I didn't pick him to beat Wineland, but I was like, Wineland's very legit. I know he's late in his career. He's got a lot of mileage, but I think anyone looking at even just his recent results, he hadn't been knocked out in like 6 years. You know, he's losing decisions. Fine, he wasn't getting like dominated, right? So it was a good test for him, and it is kind of the one that won me over. I mean, a lot of people have seen the flashes of striking. And I saw them too. I just didn't believe that it was necessarily real, but I'm starting to like a lot of what I see from him. He's getting better with every fight. I think the time to catch him, like I said, was Sukumtat could have snuck in, stolen a win there. I think the time to catch him was a couple of years ago. Now I'm not saying he's unbeatable, but it's gonna be tough to do so. Marlon Vera, very good matchup, but a guy very much plays to his style. It's gonna be an action fight, and I don't think O'Malley loses those right now. So love Cheeto, but I'm going chalk and going with the heavy favorite.
I'm with you on that one, Alex. I think O'Malley pulls this one off, and as much as we should respect Cheeto Vera as an opponent here, you know, his style plays right into what O'Malley likes to do. Vera is going to engage with him. He's going to come right at him. He's going to try to stay in his face, and I think he's going to give O'Malley a lot of opportunities to do what O'Malley likes to do. And on top of that, Vera is pretty hittable guy. You can touch him. It's not like he's necessarily a defensive mastermind. So I think with O'Malley's power, with his reach, with, you know, not only with the flashy strikes, with his mastery of the fundamentals, the way he knocked out Eddie Wineland, it wasn't flashy. It was a feint uppercut to a cross. That is very fundamental, and that's classic boxing material right there. O'Malley has the ability to hit you with the fundamentals and throw the flashy stuff just because it's fun. That variety with Vera's style, I mean, Vera's the perfect sort of opponent to build O'Malley right now.
Yes.
And not that Vera can't go in there and smash a lot of people that are ranked higher than him. Not that he doesn't have that capability, but O'Malley is something different in this sort of style. So I say O'Malley wins this one, and I think he wins it violently. I think second round knockout. All right, so let's move on to that main event, the fight to determine the greatest heavyweight of all time, Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic 3. Ben, who you got?
I've got Stipe. I think this fight looks more like their second fight than their first. I'll be interested to see if Cormier tries to bring it to the ground. You know, not many people have really done that to Stipe. Cormier, at the heart of it, is just this bowling ball, low center of gravity wrestler. I mean, it is indelible in my mind, the picture of him just scooping up Josh Barnett and dumping him on his dome like nobody had ever done before or since, to one of, well, I mean, we just had the talk. At the time, maybe one of the 5 greatest heavyweights in MMA history. He's still capable of doing that. He is that guy, and he can do that to any heavyweight on the planet. I'll be interested to see if he tries, but if he just makes it a kickboxing match with Miocic, I think it looks more like the second fight than the first. You know, time is not on his side in this trilogy. And Miocic saw the benefits of investing in body work. I think he can weather Cormier's best on the feet and win going away in the later rounds or maybe a late finish.
All right. Jay, who you got?
The way I see this kind of being a hybrid of the first 2 fights. We've seen Cormier lately. If you guys have seen training footage, he's got some work to do, which is a thing to say, not as a large guy saying about another large guy, but this, I'm not sold on DC going into this fight. And that's so strange because of how he's conducted himself throughout his career, but he just doesn't quite look like he's all into it. I don't know if it's body language. I'm no expert or something like that, but it feels like, you know, he's kind of already 1 foot out the door and then some. Like, we know this is a retirement fight, but we know that for me, it feels like not, I want to retire with a win like Uriah Faber did before he did the whole comeback thing. And many other fighters have done. I want to go out with a win and do whatever. It's I'm done, win or lose. And it feels like that thing is creeping into his mentality. Ooh, he's going to get me. And what I see is one of the first strikes that Miocic is going to throw is going to be right to the liver. He'd be crazy if it isn't. And I mean, DC will give him a really hard first round. He could pick him up. He could slam him down. He might do that wrestling thing. If DC is going to win this fight, he has to do it in the first round. And that's something I don't know if he'll be able to do again. I think the catching him in the clinch and dropping him that way was a one-time deal because Stipe didn't get into those exchanges in the second fight. And although he was losing the first 2 rounds, some people had him losing the first 3, but I just had the first 2 before Stipe started coming back into it. Things started to change. Cardio started to fade. Stipe targeted the body. Heads, Miocic. Tails, Cormier. Well, Cormier.
All right. Very scientific. Alex?
I'm with the coin. I'm going DC. It should be noted, I picked both fights of the trilogy incorrect so far. I thought Miocic would retain the first time. I thought that Cormier would retain in the rematch. Both times I was very, very wrong. Again, like I said, my predictions are the worst. Check them out every Saturday morning on MMAfighting.com. But I don't know. In my mind, I just think Cormier is the better fighter. When I think skill for skill, who do I think is the better fighter? Try not to overcomplicate things. I'm like, I think Cormier is better. Now, again, this does depend on, as we've talked about, is he going to use his wrestling? How much can he use his wrestling? And how effectively can he use it against Miocic, who has very good wrestling defense? So, like I said, he certainly, Cormier can certainly toss any heavyweight up in the air and onto their head. But Miocic, he's competent enough to either, stop that, or if it happens, not get put into too bad a position on the ground. So we might see it, but it might not, be this fight-changing slam or what have you. But I do think Cormier, I'm just trying to keep it simple. Cormier, I think, is the better fighter. I think my prediction for the fight itself, I think it's going to be a classic. I do think we're going to be a great, I don't know if it's going to go to a decision. I think you guys are right. I think someone's going to find a finish at some point, but it could go 3 or 4 rounds. And I think this guy's going to leave it all out there. It's going to be very emotional. I think we're definitely going to have a crying Daniel Cormier by the end, win or lose. And he might not be the only one. I do get emotional when I watch these fights and seeing a great like Cormier retire. Could get a little dusty in here.
All right, well, as someone who found himself unexpectedly emotional while watching The Office, I'm not mad at that. So I am going to go ahead and say Daniel Cormier should win this fight. Now, I think it's going to be about his wrestling. In that second fight, he did use his wrestling. That first round was all wrestling. He took him down, looked fairly easy from my vantage point. Looked like he took him down fairly easily and controlled positioning. But he completely abandoned it after that and elected to have a sloppy dogfight. Now, I'm one of the people who scored the first 3 rounds in his favor in their rematch, but the tide was definitely turning, and you could see his punches landing with a lot less power. You can see Stipe gaining confidence, and you start seeing the body work come into play around that 3rd round. I'm not sure if Cormier if he hurt himself at some point due to the wrestling, and that's why he abandoned it, or if it was some misguided hubris that made him think, okay, I'm going to go ahead and knock him out on the feet. I'm not sure what it was, but I think that Cormier is not going to make that mistake again. I think he's going to come out there, give him enough of the stand-up to make him respected, remind him what happened at UFC 226, then go ahead for that leg, drag him to the floor, and ragdoll him for as long as he possibly can. And if Stipe were to be able to get up, rinse and repeat, that is, I think, going to be the sure formula for this. The only thing that gives me pause is that Cormier does have talent at very inopportune times if the fight goes on long enough. I think if he takes a round off in this, it could spell disaster.
Yeah.
Both of these gentlemen, I expect them, knowing what legacy is at stake here, they're going to come out guns blazing. They're not going to have anything held back. I'm expecting an incredible fight. And just because I said that, it's probably going to suck. So,
Can I ask one thing real quick of everybody? If whatever the result, will this be a double retirement match or just a single?
Single.
I think there's a possibility of a double.
I think so.
I don't know why. Just because I always anticipate chaos. If Ant is anticipating that his positive prediction leads to negativity, I won't go that far. I'm a very positive thinking person, but I do think the potential for chaos is super high. And Miocic, again, what we know of his personality, look, he's just not like other fighters. We know that. He's not this kind of guy. I don't think he's obsessed with legacy. I'm not sure how often he talks about like, oh, I want to make sure I'm the greatest. It's kind of like, oh, well, people think I'm the greatest. Great. If they don't think I'm the greatest, it's okay. Right? That's what he would say, right? So I could totally see him, the double hands raised, both guys doing the walk around the octagon. Oh, damn, now I'm getting emotional already. Guys, we're gonna rein it in. But could we see a double retirement?
I don't think we'll see the double retirement. I mean, the thing that makes us for sure, besides his age, that Cormier is going to hang it up after this. He said that he's not willing to fight some of the newer heavyweights.
Right.
Like, he doesn't want to fight a Rosenstruck or an Ngannou, or he's not looking forward to any of these matches. He wasn't originally wanting to fight Derrick Lewis until the UFC just gave him a big enough check, and he figured, okay, that's a winnable fight. Stipe, on the other hand, will fight pretty much anybody put in front of him. He probably doesn't even know who anyone is anyway, and he's all right. Show up. You're gonna pay me what? Okay, I'll be there. I think with that mentality, he's much more likely to stick around, even if the matchups that await him aren't that sexy. And that being said, there's still an Ngannou rematch out there for him that people will buy, because you never know if Ngannou actually can wrestle now, or if he actually has cardio beyond the first 18 seconds of the fight, because we haven't seen it. So I do think that Miocic is going to stick around, and not necessarily because he is that he doesn't care about legacy or whatever. He's just not that sort of guy. He's just, all right, you're going to pay me, I'll show up and I'll beat somebody up. So Stipe's going to fight again. DC, this will probably be the last time we see him, unless he is talked into a third Jones fight at heavyweight. That's the only other thing that's going to get him out of bed, and I hope he doesn't get out of bed for that. So, all right, gentlemen, so that is going to do it for this edition of Unleashed. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Let's go ahead and thank the man Alexander K. Lee for taking time out of his busy Canadian schedule to jump on online with us to go ahead and discuss people getting punched in the face for money. Also want to thank Jay and Ben for their great work as always. And through the magic of post-production, you can go ahead and see our Twitter handles right here. So with that being said, check out Alex on MMA Fighting. His most likely wrong predictions, as he said, will be released on Saturday morning for UFC 252. Jay and Ben, you can find their predictions officially on the SureDog staff picks, and you can find the rest of their fine work at SureDog.com. My work, Body Lock, MMA On Point, My MMA News. So you know what you got to do. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay socially distanced, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.